Welcome to the CEP Talks. Our talk on emotional intelligence and leadership was due on 18th of March. However, due to the horrible pandemic, we have not been able to get a congregation together. That's why we thought that maybe we will do some recording sessions and share these videos with you. Especially since most of us are in quarantine, this topic of emotional intelligence is very apt. And I hope that you will find it useful. So in this talk, I'll be talking about three main things. The first is, what is emotional intelligence? What are the main components of emotional intelligence? I also want to provide you with a framework of problem solving that has emotional intelligence embedded in it. And I also want to talk about a few tips which you can use to improve or increase your emotional intelligence. So let's get started. Most of the talks that I'm going to talk about, or most of the things that I'm going to talk about today, are taken from the work of Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman published this book, Emotional Intelligence, quite a few years ago, and since then it has become a Bible for anyone who is studying emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman basically talks about the fact that your success is not directly correlated to your intelligence quotient. It's actually your IQ plus your EQ that will lead to success. He also goes on and talks about how to manage our emotions, how to harness the power of our emotions to get the best out of our IQ, and how to work with others. So let's talk about Peter Salovey's 5 components of emotional intelligence. These 5 components come together and form what is commonly known as emotional intelligence. So the first one here is self-awareness. The second one is managing emotions. The third one is self-motivation. Fourth one being empathy, and the last one is handling relationships. So let's start with the first one, which is self-awareness and metacognition. Knowing your emotions and recognizing your emotions is the fundamental basis of emotional intelligence. If you can't notice your feelings, then you are at the mercy of those emotions, and that is not good for you. According to the famous psychologist John Mayers, self-awareness, that is being aware of your own moods and your own thoughts, is the key to success. Your ability to identify and name those emotions is equally important. Being able to know that emotion and being non-reactive and non-judgmental towards those emotions is the key to success here. This is anger, or this is sadness, or this is delight. You need to know those emotions and you need to be non-judgmental towards them. Because once you start knowing your emotions or start naming those emotions, the side of the brain that becomes more active is the more rational side of the brain, the neocortex, and the flight and fright side of your brain becomes a little less active. So you start making more rational decisions. The essence of metacognition and self-awareness is your ability to rise above an experience, to be aware of that experience as it is, rather than being completely immersed in that particular emotion. And this is the essence of mindfulness and meditation as well, a meta-level awareness, thinking about thinking. The next component of emotional intelligence is managing emotions. Your ability to handle emotions, not to suppress them, not to numb them, but to handle them. So as the famous Stoic philosopher Aristotle famously said, the key is to have emotions appropriate to the circumstances. You should be able to know what kind of emotions you are at, and is your life all about your mood, or is your mood being determined by the kind of life you are living? So diffusing the challenging emotion and delaying gratification can lead to a lot of success. The next component of emotional intelligence is self-motivation, that is harnessing the power of your emotions. Being able to use your emotions in order to get the goals you desire, that is absolutely crucial here. And being enthusiastic about those goals and being persistent in that kind of work is the key here. Emotions out of control can harm us, but if we learn how to manage and harness the emotions, we can truly motivate our own selves. We can either be limited by our emotions because emotions can diminish our performance, or we can motivate ourselves to give our best in our pursuits, that is harness the most out of our mental capabilities. Emotional self-control is critical to great accomplishments. Impulse control, delaying gratification, that plays a huge role in success. This is the YatesDodson Curve. It shows that there is an optimum level of stress that is required for any kind of work. So on your x-axis we have stress, on your y-axis we have performance, and in order to improve performance, stress is required. However, there is an optimum level of stress in every individual. Knowing what is that optimum level of stress and making sure that you stay and you keep that stress level to that particular place is the key to success. However, you must note that this is a bell curve. So as stress will improve, the performance, stress will keep on increasing, your performance will decrease as well. However, there are certain people who have this profile a little higher, who have a stress profile which is a little higher, and there are certain people who do not have that high level of tolerance towards stress, and knowing that is the key here. This is the famous book written by Walter Mischel, the Marshmallow Test, and there are many interesting examples and experiments mentioned in this book, but I will talk about the one which I like the most. This is known as the Marshmallow Test. Here in this particular experiment, 4-year-old kids were given a marshmallow. And they were told that if you don't eat this marshmallow in 20 minutes, you will get another one. Some kids couldn't wait and ate the first one, while some waited for the second marshmallow. The researchers followed these kids for 14 years, and 14 years later they observed and analyzed their SAT scores. Kids who could not wait for the second marshmallow scored at 1052 in their SATs, while students who waited for the second marshmallow scored 1262, almost 20% more than the kids who did not have impulse or self-control. So delaying gratification plays a huge role in social success at a later on stage as well. And these kids who delayed gratification were better socialized, had better social skills, and had better jobs and family lives. So goal-directed, self-imposed delay of gratification plays a crucial role in success. There are many other books written in this area. The two other very common books are Willpower and The Willpower Instinct. However, the one I most prefer is Learned Optimism by Martin Seligman. Martin talks about optimism and pessimism, and he says that optimism can be learned. According to Martin, optimists see the reason of failure as within their control. However, pessimists see the reason of failure as something that is outside their control, and that is something that is fixed. According to Martin, optimism can be learned through self-efficacy, that is the belief that we can make something happen. We can actually learn optimism. The key to developing self-efficacy is to start with small challenges, to accomplish them, and to take on bigger challenges from there. So Learned Optimism, a very key important book. If anyone wants to improve their emotional intelligence skills, must go through this book. The next component of emotional intelligence is empathy, recognizing the emotions of others. And this basically builds on to our first component, that is self-awareness. Once you start understanding your own emotions, your ability to understand the emotions of others will equally improve. And there are many researches done which talk about the benefits of empathy. Some of these benefits are that an individual is more likely to become more popular, more outgoing, more sensitive, and better at handling relationships with the opposite gender. The last component that we have of emotional intelligence is handling relationships, managing our own emotions, but at the same time having empathy for others. At its pinnacle, this will help you bring others in your emotional realm. And it will also help you set the emotional tone for an interaction, which is a key skill in any social interaction. The most powerful person is the person who sets the tone for an emotional interaction, and I think that is a key here. There are 4 abilities that comprise of interpersonal intelligence, according to Hatch and Gardner. These 4 abilities are: number 1, organizing groups, that is coordinating the efforts of people; negotiating, personal connection; and social analysis, being able to analyze and dissect the situation at hand. However, the caveat here is that don't be a chameleon. Act always, and I mention always, in alignment with your values and feelings, no matter what. And this book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is a very important book and will help you understand more of these concepts. Our next phase of this presentation talks about a methodology that has emotional intelligence embedded in it. This methodology is known as design thinking. Design thinking is a problem-solving methodology. It helps you generate new ideas or solve problems in a very short span of time. So what is design? Design is not aesthetics. Design is not an event. Design is neither a product or a service. And design is not an experience either. So design thinking is basically a process of solving big problems, of generating new ideas in a short span of time. And as I am claiming that it has emotional intelligence embedded in it, it starts with empathy. The first phase of design thinking is empathy, that is empathizing towards the stakeholders, towards the customers for whom you are solving a problem or for whom you are building a particular product or service. So you collaborate with them and you understand their feelings and emotions, that is, you empathize with them. Then you synthesize those emotions and you define certain problems. You ideate those problems, you develop different ideas to solve those problems. You select a few of those ideas and you prototype them and you test them, and this cycle continues. And this is the process that we talk about of problem solving, which has emotional intelligence embedded in it. So let's talk a little bit more about this. This approach is a human-centered approach because at its very center is the human being who is facing a problem or who wants to generate new ideas. This involves radical collaboration with the people working in that team, trying to produce those ideas or solutions, or collaborating with the people who are suffering from those problems or need those new ideas. There is a culture of prototyping embedded in design thinking. So instead of waiting for long periods of time and developing a perfect product or a perfect solution and presenting it to the relevant people, this has rapid prototyping embedded in it. And the focus here is to show rather than to tell. So rather than having long discussions and people talking for hours and hours, the focus in design thinking is to showing and demonstrating. Similarly, design thinking has an action bias rather than a thinking bias. Here, we try to build solutions rather than just talk about them. Also, this process is very mindful of what is happening. People who are developing these ideas or solving these problems are aware that at what stage we need to focus more and on what stage we need to go into that generalization stage and flare those ideas for more creativity and innovation. So here's the difference between design and design thinking. Design usually involves individuals. Design thinking involves teams. Design usually involves products or services. Design thinking involves experiences. Design involves engineering and art. However, design thinking is more interdisciplinary and involves many other disciplines apart from engineering and art, which can include human beings or humanizing different problems, business, technology, and many others. So this is one of the incubators that was developed using the concept of design thinking in India. As you all know, that children at an early age need to be kept in a controlled environment. However, many children or many areas and rural countries where there aren't many facilities do not have these incubators. And this entrepreneur developed, using design thinking, this very simple and very cheap incubator for kids. And there are many other examples of companies using design thinking all over the world to solve big problems and to generate new ideas. Children are using this to solve their problems. Multinationals are using this methodology as well. So I highly recommend you to explore design thinking more, and hopefully we will be doing more sessions on design thinking very soon. So now I want to present my 10 tips for developing emotional intelligence. The first one is mindfulness meditation. And there are more than 1,000 studies that talk about or that link mindful meditation with more productivity. It has said to improve self-awareness, metacognition, that is thinking about thinking, pain tolerance, impulse control, optimism and grit, compassion and self-compassion, performance under pressure, brain performance. All these things improve if you perform mindfulness meditation. It also helps reduce anxiety, depression, stress, and nervousness. The second tip is that whenever you feel a strong emotion, write it down. The act of naming diffuses the power of that emotion, and it helps you engage that side of your brain which is more rational, and helps you also build the emotional vocabulary and will help you develop more of your self-awareness. Cognitive behavioral therapy is an ancient methodology for dealing with depression and anxiety. Feeling Good by David Burns is a very important book, and I highly recommend that any of you, if you are facing any negative challenges in your life, and if you feel that you are in need of solving those problems and those challenges, I highly recommend you to read this book. David Burns usually breaks this therapy down into four different phases. He says that the first is to face that challenging emotion. The second is to focus on the situation, to focus on the thought rather than the situation. So what thought has led to that emotion? Not the situation, but the thought. Focus on the thought that is leading to that particular emotion. Then what is the distortion in your thought? There are several distortions that are mentioned in the literature. Some of these distortions are all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, discounting the positives, emotional reasoning, that is assuming feelings are facts, labeling, etc. These are some of the distortions of our thoughts. So what are the distortions that you are facing, and why are you facing them? Then develop a rational response. Rationally respond to that distortion thought, and hopefully you'll start feeling better about your particular situation. Our next tip is to change your physiology. Changing your physiology changes your biochemistry. Standing in a powerful position will increase your dominance hormone and reduce your stress hormone. Testosterone being the dominance hormone and cortisol being the stress hormone. So just changing your physiology changes your biochemistry. In his book, The Unlimited Power, Anthony Robbins talks about the power of physiology, words, and vision in managing your emotional state. Some people claim that after reading this book and after practicing these over several years, they have been able to do remarkable things and almost inhuman things because of this unlimited power. So this book is also worth reading. Some of the other power hacks include standing in a power pose or occupying lots of space when you're feeling nervous or anxious or depressed. That also raises your testosterone level and reduces your cortisol and reduces your stress. Some of the simple hacks that I've been using is taking a walk, taking a run. That also helps you shake down your bad moods and helps you think in a more rational manner. Breathing exercises also help a lot. Breathing in a pattern of 10 breaths, inhaling on the count of 4 and exhaling on the count of 8 also changes your brain chemistry and helps you think in a more rational manner. The next tip that I have is to architect a small win. When you feel unmotivated, lazy, lethargic, sad, or in a funk, assign yourself a small task. Even write it on a piece of paper and complete it. Cross off the task from the paper. You get a sense of completion and victory, and you will be ready for a bigger challenge. Helping others in need. In the book, The Upside of Stress, Dr. Kelly McGonigal talks about the benefits of helping others. And it is said that mortality rate goes down by 33% if you're spending time helping others on a weekly basis. Another important book which talks about helping others is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. And he says that one of the greatest ways to change your mood for the better is to help others in need. So help others and improve your own mood and improve your emotional intelligence. Our next tip is empathy exercises. It is very simple. Try to read people's emotions by watching their non-verbals. And you won't get their feelings right the first time. It will take a lot of exercises, a lot of practice, but eventually you will get there. But doing this will improve your empathy for others and will improve your emotional intelligence as well. In his book, Awaken the Giant Within, Tony Robbins talks about reframing problems. So no matter how difficult a situation is, ask yourself, how will this situation turn out for my advantage? What is good for me in this situation? And in this way, you can also frame your past failures. How has this helped me move forward? How has it made a positive impact on my life? So reframing your problems will help you improve your emotional intelligence, and it will help you get over certain situations as well. In his book, The Obstacle is the Way, Ryan Holiday talks about many different ways and methods of reframing your problems, and he says that obstacles sometimes are a way towards success. And one of my favorite quotes in this book is actually by a Stoic philosopher, Marcus Aurelius. He says that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. So reframing these obstacles will help you move forward and will help you become more successful. One of the bonus tips that I have for you is to focus on how, not on what. So whenever there is a conflict with anyone, focus on how rather than what. Focus on their body language, focus on their tonality, focus on their gestures and voice. Trust the non-verbal more than the words, because often non-verbal represents the true feelings of the other person. So I hope some of these tips helped you, and I hope this will help you improve your emotional intelligence in this time. Thank you very much.